Okay, tell me I'm ready.
All right, let's roll.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I am calling to order the Board of Commissioners in this scheduled quasi-judicial hearing procedure for planning. I'm going to remove my mask just because it's hard for the recording to pick it up when I have that on. Again, this hearing is slated for today, May 11th, 2021. The time now is just past 2:30. We do have all three of the commissioners here, Commissioner Donnie Boyd, Commissioner Derek DeGroot, and myself, Commissioner Kelly Minty Morris. If everyone would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, for the record, this exception remand is related to the applicant of the City of Chiloquin and the grant for an exception to Goal 4 of the statewide planning goals for the new City of Chiloquin treatment facility. We will take a staff report. We'll have testimony by the appellant and also an opportunity for rebuttals and questions from the board. We do take public comment in this style of hearing. That will be limited to 3 minutes. When it's your turn to comment, you can come up to the podium, say your name. Commissioner Boyd will we'll have the honors of doing, wait, is that right? Or is it Commissioner?
Doesn't matter.
It's usually the vice chair, yeah. He will have a 30-second marker for you and then a hard stop when it's time to stop. We can all follow the rules on that, hopefully, so that we can, we do have a lot of people in this room, especially in light of everything that's going on, so we will try to keep that to where that should be, and by the end, the board will deliberate.
I'm having trouble hearing.
I know. Can you move to a spot closer to the front? I will ask people to try to project, but is there a way you could move to a closer spot? Maybe someone will switch with you.
Can I trade you?
All right. So first I need to check in with the board to see if anyone has possible conflicts or has had ex parte contact.
No.
Do not.
No? All right. That's great. So just as a reminder to everyone,
See now.
yeah, no touching the
I
mics.
can hear,
That
but
gets
I can't see.
yeah,
You
that
can move to your left, your right one. Move right over here.
yeah.
I'll just sit up straight.
That's fine. Touching the microphone messes up the recording audio, and we are streaming this and we have recordings. So if you can refrain from touching the mic, I know it's very it's instinctual when you get up to the mic to adjust it, but please don't. So the decision that will be made today will be based on the record. That decision is from today only. No personal contacts or personal investigation is to be done. All exhibits, letters, and staff reports are numbered and admitted. And with that, we will start with the staff report. Mr. Noble.
Thank you. So, just to set expectations a little bit for today, this afternoon at 2 o'clock, shortly before, I received a email from an attorney representing some people opposed to the City of Chiloquin's request. That attorney requested that there be an open period after this hearing of 14 days, and then another 14 days to respond, a response period, following up with a 7-day period for the applicant to submit summary testimony. So with that, and as we know, ORS 197.763 says that if someone does make such a request, we have to grant them a continuance. So there'll be no decision today. We can, at the end of the hearing, we can debate whether we want to grant the 14 days or just the 7-day thing. But that's at the end. I just want to set everyone's expectations of what will be occurring. So up here is the zoning map. There is a square or rectangle that's colored tan color. that represents the site that the city of Chiloquin owns. The surrounding property is zoned forestry, and in fact, this property is also zoned forestry in there. You can see the city of Chiloquin is this yellow color with the Williamson River going down through the heart of that. So the idea is to take the wastewater plants, it's about here now, is to take a line, bring it up here, and then develop a sewer treatment facility, and then apply the effluent onto the forest land. Here's just a little closer picture of it, and on this picture, we have to note that the area in question is part of the high-density Roosevelt Winter Range. Here's a contour map of the area. This map shows that we have a rather flat area here going up into this, and then we have a ridge line that separates the property from the houses here. So it goes up, it's kind of a plateau that comes back down. The treatment facility would be in this general area. Here's a little bit better of a site plan, more specific of a site plan, showing the treatment facility and then the area being proposed to irrigate with the reclaimed water. So the county already listened to this and approved it. That approval was appealed to LUBA, and LUBA stands for Land Use Board of Appeals. And there was 6 assignment of errors that were found. The first one was the conduct of the hearing. That assignment of the error was denied, but the rest of them was sustained, or LUBA found that it needed to be remanded back to the county because they had inadequate criteria or findings, or we just didn't do something that the record showed that we did something that didn't take all the information into consideration. So this is the assignment of errors. This is what we really should limit our testimony to today. The second one is adequate findings to justify a Goal 4 exception. The state of Oregon has 12 land use planning goals that apply statewide, and Goal 4 is the forestry one. Third one did not apply the criteria of Article 48. Article 48 is in our land development code, and they specifically how you can modify the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is the overarching plan saying what land should be zoned residential, industrial, commercial, and a resource zone such as forestry. The fourth one was we did not adopt findings related to the elk winter range. The fifth one was Goal 11 was not demonstrated. So Goal 11 talks about the resources between the urban and resource land. The concern was if they bring this line from the city of Chiloquin out here to this forest area, can other people outside of urban growth boundary, can they hook up into the line? It was talked about no, and that's the correct answer, but it just wasn't in the findings as much. And again, the sixth one relates to Article 57. Article 57 in the Land Development Code is our significant resource 1. And that's where you find the siting standards and different stipulations for the big game winter range, which would include the elk, wetlands, and that sort of stuff. So that's what they found. So the applicant worked and submitted, and as part of the packet, and you can see the list of exhibit numbers to it. So they went back and addressed Article 47, 48, 55, and 59. Article 47, it wasn't on the announcement, but is an article or criteria that applies to this. I want to bring up other exhibits that were put into the packet. The Bennetts, they sent in 2 different letters, and those were both in the packet. Those requested the hearing be rescheduled, as long as with some other things, but it was a request, so I put that in there. Judy Dahl submitted 2, and they're in there. And Mark Bartholomew, the attorney for the applicant, requested that I announce that Article 47 applies to this area. Possible actions. Well, this is the ultimate outcome, as we just said, we are going to have this action today. Approval. The board can look through the documents that you have and look through what the applicant gave them and said, yes, this meets the criteria, this added information demonstrates the compliance with state laws and Klamath County requirements, and order the applicant to draft the final order for ordinance for approval. So all the findings and all that. Or the board has the ability to look through these items and says, no, I don't think the criteria is quite met yet. But if we have these certain conditions placed on it, then the criteria is going to be met and we'll move forward with that. And the last option is denial of the application. The Board of Commissioners can look at all the evidence the opponent supplied, and decide, you know, the criteria hasn't been met, this application should be denied. Those are our options today, and with that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Okay, questions for the planning director from the board? Anything?
No.
All right, so the appellant has an opportunity to testify 10 minutes at the podium.
Do you swear or affirm that the statements you make in this hearing shall be true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Clark Stevens with Richard Stevens and Associates, and we're located at 100 East Main Street in Medford, Oregon. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. We're here as land use consultants representing the City of Chiloquin on this goal exception application. Adkins Engineering is the project managers for this site and project, and Mr. Bartholomew is here as their attorney. This application is for a comp plan amendment and zone change to a limited use overlay by demonstrating compliance for a reasons exception to Goal 4 and a CUP conditional use permit application for the wastewater treatment facility, which includes wastewater lagoons and an area for irrigation of that effluent. Based on LUBA's remand, we have addressed or readdressed Article 48, which is the comprehensive plan amendment criteria. That's in your record there, which includes the studies and factual information that Adkins Engineering has provided to you as part of their wastewater facilities plan that's been adopted by the city. So the wastewater facilities plan also includes the alternative sites analysis and demonstrating where the facility can be located in relation to sites that were considered as part of this project. We've also addressed the policies of the Klamath County Comprehensive Plan. We've addressed the statewide planning goals, and in particular Goal 5, which is the elk wintering habitat, and we addressed that as part of the Article 57, which is included in that burden of proof document. We've also addressed Goal 6 in consideration of the air, water, and land quality. And what this project will do is eliminate the discharge of effluent into the Williamson River. Currently, they are in violation of both state and federal standards for this. And part of the alternative sites is that we, could look at upgrading this, but this is a better alternative in the long run because we won't have any future failures for discharging non-compliant effluent into the river. We've addressed Goal 11 as far as the public facilities in the main line connection from the city along the Highway 422 right-of-way to the subject property. We've addressed OAR 660-004-0020 for the reasons exception to justify our request before you today. And we've also addressed the ESEE, which is the economic, environmental, social, and energy aspects of this application. So a part of Article 48, we've also, to accomplish the land use overlay, or limited use overlay, we addressed Article 47, which is demonstrating compliance with the zone change. And then also Article 59, which demonstrates compliance with applying the limited use overlay on the subject property. We've also readdressed Article 55, which is the conditional use permit criteria. And we've gone over this at the last hearing in that we demonstrated that there's no significant increase or changes in the costs or farming practices or the forest practices on the surrounding lands. And there's, well, no significant increase in the fire hazard. This property has had a significant burn, so that was prior to. We're not adding to it, and I believe with the irrigation and the ponds that actually will be a greener aspect out there, so there will be no additional increase in the fire hazard of that area. Number 3 is that a restrictive covenant be recorded with the property to recognize the surrounding farm and forest lands. And then number 4 is that the proposed use is or can be made compatible with the existing uses on surrounding lands. This can include monitoring from the city of Chiloquin, in that they'll have to be doing at least weekly, if not daily, site visits and inspections and monitoring of the equipment there on site. This can include a contact person with the city that, you know, in case there is a complaint, that there is someone to contact, because they're there for 1 hour a day. What happens on the other 23 hours? And all of this also has to be in compliance with the DEQ standards and regulations. So there is assurances that this is, as you know, or can be made compatible with the surrounding area. And with that, I'll conclude and try to answer any questions.
All right, does anyone from the board have questions for this gentleman?
I don't.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'd like to reserve time for rebuttal, or I think this will be
I do
continued.
have time for rebuttal. Yep, I'll call it. We do it it's very prescriptive. So, so now I will take public testimony. First, I want to take testimony from those who agree with the appeal. So in other words, are against the proposal. And then after, I will take testimony from folks who want to speak in support of the original decision. Does that make sense? First the no's, then the yeses. Do we have people signed up?
You have to sign up to speak.
You do. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We will take public testimony. If we do have anyone already signed up, I can start that way. Can we leave a sign-up form for folks that didn't know?
We just thought that was a sign-in sheet.
Yeah, we thought it was a sign-in sheet.
Okay, so we probably didn't have great communication on that piece, did we? Okay, I'm going to do it a little more old school then. Raise your hand if you're going to, just to get us started, but then we'll be having people sign in and sign yes or no if you're going to be in the no group, which is first, or the yes group. Libby will pass that around, but while she's doing that, just for efficiency of time, who's a no? Okay.
No, against, what are we asking?
Who's a no? Or in other words, you support the appeal.
I support the appeal.
So you're in favor, so that's what the testimony will be.
Against the
I'm
project.
not in favor of the pond, the sewage treatment.
Gotcha. Okay, is that you two as well? Okay, why don't we start with you two, and then while you're doing your testimony, Libby will be taking names. So names if you're a yes to the project or a no and want to provide testimony. Okay.
I want to provide testimony.
Okay, that's fine. Who wants to provide testimony? Okay, are you a no? Okay, come on up. And
I have letters that I'd like to present to
you can present them there to staff and she'll get them to us.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes, and if you can start with your name, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you. My name is Peggy Jacobus, and our family has owned property next to where you're proposing for over 50 years. And this is, if we move back to the original screen of the mountainside that shows the lay of the land, as you can see, this is a mountainside. There's very little of this land down here that is level enough to put a pond, which means that the side of the mountain is going to have to be excavated. Now, we also have earthquakes, and we also have heavy snow and rain in this area. So I think that we need to take into consideration, because of the burn that's on the mountainside here, that when you spray affluent sewer water over this area that is now burned with no vegetation on it, all you're going to get is a mudslide of contaminated water going over Highway 422. It will take years for this area to grow back. It has been almost completely clear-cut by the city of Chiloquin, meaning that the proposal that you looked at last year is totally different from the proposal that you're getting today. Because we were told at the last hearing that there would be trees that would filter out the affluent smell. There are no trees to filter out the affluent smell. There are no trees to block the view of the sewer ponds from the highway. There is the topical lay of the land. If those sewer ponds were to flood, which they will, because we get 4 feet of snow in the winter, those ponds, you are not going to be able to spray affluent sewer water over the mountainside during the winter months. The lines will freeze. It gets below freezing. That means that the 9-acre pond that you have will be collecting sewage for the 6 months of the winter months that we get 6 feet of snow. And if you do spray affluent over the mountainside and the water has a mudslide, because it's a full mountainside that they're spraying on, it's going to have a mudslide over the, which is going to go right into our water table and right into our neighbors' homes. This land has been designated for forest and elk land. This land has many animals that consider it their home, and by spraying affluent water, this ground will not filter this water. If you have a filter in your house, do you have water filters in your home? You have to change those water filters every few months because they get absorbed with contaminant. The mountainside is not designed to absorb the contaminant.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who else is here to provide comment agreeing with the appeal? Anyone? Public comment in support of the appeal?
Against the project.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't we take you first since you're right there, and then you'll be next, okay? Come up, be sworn in by Libby, and introduce yourself.
Please be sure that you sign in. If you haven't signed
I did sign in. I didn't check a box.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, you'll need to raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the statement you make this hearing shall be true to the best of your ability?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Lisa Bertash, I'm at 304 South Lalo in Chiloquin.
All right, 3 minutes.
I don't have a lot to offer. I read that this was federally protected forest land, and I'm just wondering how the city of Chiloquin is able to purchase and clear-cut federally protected land that's designated for elk habitat. I'm a little miffed. It seems like this was pushed through. There was a hearing in April of 2020 when we were all in lockdown, so we weren't able to attend. And there was not opportunity for public input, but we're doing that now, so that's kind of
It seems like there was no discussion for alternative treatments and location explored during the process. And when this gentleman spoke, he didn't speak of the ecological impact of the land. You talked about social, economical, but you didn't talk about the ecological, the environmental impact. Also, I know from other sewage treatment facilities that they're quite noisy, and there are homes just adjacent to this property. It's going to be stinky and noisy and an eyesore in our beautiful community. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right, you're next with the flowered mask, yes? And then while she's coming up, is there somebody else that wants to provide comment? Okay, you'll be after her.
Do you swear or affirm that the statements you make at this hearing shall be true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Okay. Peggy Idonis, 2378 Highway 422, Chiloquin, Oregon.
Thank you.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. First, I'm concerned about the secrecy of all this stuff that's been going on. We were never notified. We live 1 mile from Highway 62, and nobody on our end of Highway 422, no one was notified about anything to do with this. Last year, Adkins came on my property and wanted to do a survey for the flood zone, and I told them no, and well, they came back with an ORS that said they could do it. I'm concerned about the water. We get our water from an underground river. And I don't know, there was nothing said about an underground river. They hit water at my house at 25 feet. The house on the end of our road was almost artesian. And nothing has been said about that. And there's no habitat for the animals. And that's all a concern of mine. But why weren't we notified? I really want to know about that.
Okay, thank you. It's
Thank
not a
you.
Q&A, but I'm sure somebody will address that at some point. Thank you. All right, so you were next, and then, so as she's walking up, I was like, okay, you'll be after that.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the statements you make at this hearing shall be true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
I'm Corey Crutcher of Heartline Ranch, 41837 Highway 62, Chiloquin, Oregon.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, my husband and I bought Bob Ferguson's land back in, I think it was 2014. And we were initially supposed to be able to buy that parcel 3, which is what Chiloquin bought. We had a right of refusal and was totally ignored by the realtor, and it was sold to Chiloquin. So we're pretty upset about all of that anyway, the way that went down. But we didn't contact a lawyer, we just kind of went with it. We are concerned because we're not hearing any word about the source of water that they're using for the septic. Last year they talked about a well that would be 1,500 feet or so down. That will definitely impact the water of everybody around. We're concerned about the people looking at the land and now saying it's ugly. We are the ones that did not clear cut. We did not clear cut. And our concern is for the land. I'm Navajo and Cherokee. Navajo is my first language. I'm concerned about the quality of the land, of what's going to happen with this lagoon. Just like what was said, it will freeze up. We have lots of snow. You can't look at this year for snow. 2 years ago, we had about 91 inches of snow on our ranch, which is right on the other side. So we also used to own parcel 2, which we sold to Dave Stewart last year, and he has clear cut that. Had we known that was going to happen, we would not have sold the land to him. But we don't take public horse rides anymore. Our concern is the impact of all the people that live around it, from the water, from the septic system. We're worried about the smell. We're worried about the way it looks. And worried about people now thinking that that's all trash land that they can do anything with, and ignore what happens to the people that live here in Chiloquin. We can't even vote for or against, those of us on 422 and 62, who the mayor is in Chiloquin. So they can push things through, that we don't agree with, and we can't do a thing about it, except to show up at hearings and ask for nothing to be done to our land.
All right. Thank you.
Public was not given a choice.
Okay, so ma'am, you're next, and then is there somebody else that wants to be in that? Okay, you'll be after her.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the statements you make in this hearing shall be true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Julie Gott Benedetti, 2465 Highway 422 in Chiloquin, Oregon.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I won't take nearly that long. I would just like to say that many of the sentiments that have been expressed by other people who are in support of the appeal are concerns that my husband and I share as well. But one thing that I have not heard mentioned is the treatment of the water. So I read on the short handout that was provided here today that the water will be treated with chlorine. My concern is, well, for wildlife, there are concerns for wildlife. We've already identified the elk, but other wildlife as well. But also chlorine treatment does not remove pharmaceutical products at all. And so if this effluent does infiltrate water that is then pulled out by domestic wells, ours included, then is there going to be an issue with pharmaceutical contamination?
Okay.
So that is really all I have to add, but I would like to emphasize concern for the ecology of the land, the recovery from the fire, and wildlife habitat in general.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you're up next, and then as she's walking up, is there somebody that would like to go after her? Okay, we do have someone on Zoom after that, so.
Hi, I just wanted to...
Oh, you need to be sworn in.
Hi. Oh, thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the statements you make at this hearing shall be true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, ma'am.
Please state your name and your address. for the
Judy
record.
Dahl. I'm representing 405 Highway 422. I do want you guys to notice that there's more than 5 people that live out there. I know one of the gentlemen that worked in planning said, oh, there's only 5 people out there, and we can sacrifice them at the last meeting. And I want you to know there's many more neighbors than just those 5 that they claimed were there. And I don't think it's ever a good idea to say you're going to sacrifice the neighbors when it's not necessary. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about the lay of the land. When you have, that's okay. When you have a forest area, the forest, that's like a pumice, it's like a pumice sand out there. Anyway, the forest area is made for the snow to accumulate, and it easily absorbs into the ground there. So this effluent, what's preferred for, most engineers would recommend like a forage crop or a fottage crop. Basically, the forest doesn't need to be watered. When you water in the forest, the snow melt goes into the forest, into the water. Some of the people have water that's only 25 feet under the surface in that area. There's a lot of varying well depths throughout that area. So effluent, especially where there are artesian wells and where the water level is higher, is a very valid concern. The way that the effluent should be done would be in a field, if you can put up the Chiloquin map, in a field closer to the sewer plant. They don't need the lagoons at all. They can spray the cleaner water than what Mr. Boyd said was D-grade water was okay to spray all over the forest, which creates a biohazard at the last meeting. That was particularly upsetting. But anyway, so D-grade water is not acceptable to put anywhere. It's a biohazard, and so that's why we're here, and we're holding people accountable for decisions that were made that weren't really looked into. A lot of options. The best option for the sewer plant would be for them to upgrade the sewer plant and put the water right there by the airport closest to the sewer plant. They wouldn't need to pump effluent uphill, which is hardly ever done. The old saying, it all rolls downhill. Well, that's because you don't need huge pumps from 24 hours a day that make a lot of noise to pump it uphill and water a forest that doesn't need watered. And that's the wrong kind of crop. If you put it in a fodder crop on in a field closer to the plant, that fodder crop takes up more of it, and it's less likely to get into the water systems.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the room who's here to give comment?
Yes.
Okay, come on up. You need to be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the statements you make at this hearing shall be true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Kurt Nabke, 1010 Highway 422, Chiloquin.
All right, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Could you put your red dot on my property? Just to the left.
It's to the left of the water.
Right here.
The larger parcel. The smaller one is my neighbor, Ann, and mine's the bigger one. That's 50 yards from an open cesspool. I think a picture says it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Okay, we do have somebody on joining us virtually, Sean Malone, that wanted to give comment. And if you could let him know he has 3 minutes. Okay, Sean, you have 3 minutes. Start with identifying yourself and your address. Sean, let me have you pause for a minute. Let us try to adjust your volume. We're just getting used to hybrid meetings, so to be patient with us.
That's what you said a year ago.
It's been a tough year. All right, Sean, go ahead.
Tougher for us. Yeah.
Address 259 East Fifth Avenue, Suite 200C, Eugene, Oregon 97401. Just want to touch upon a couple of issues here. First, I think it's a basic problem with the rationale for the project. The notion that the applicant is doing this for purposes of avoiding future non-compliance assumes that any upgrades that could be done to the existing wastewater facility would not remedy those issues. And it also assumes that what would occur on the proposed site with the lagoons will not result in any other issues or problems such as overflow due to rainfall, contamination of aquifers, as well as wells. Two other points of significant contradiction that I feel like I have to point out are related to the elk habitat. The applicant in ODFW alleged that there would be no net loss and actually a net benefit to wildlife habitats. However, it's undisputed that the lagoons will clearly and permanently remove habitat. The application cites two criteria and guidelines for fluent irrigation in OAR Chapter 340, Version 0.5, and include controlling access to the irrigated area, typically through the use of fencing. The application also points to Article 64, which regulates fencing. The proposed development includes a chain link fence to be constructed around the lagoon and controlled building. Access to the entire site will be controlled through the existing barbed wire fence and around the perimeter of the property. The maximum permitted height is 7 feet. So essentially we have this notion that no habitat will be removed and there will be no loss of habitat, but yet we have lagoons that will be fenced and the entire site will be fenced. The application doesn't explain how all of this fencing is compatible with the significant Goal 5 elk habitat. Another significant contradiction that I feel like I could point out is the issue of removal of the trees. Now, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like the area has been clear cut, which is problematic on a variety of levels. The applicant states that the existing trees that have survived on site will also be retained where possible to further buffer the site. Additional planting of conifer trees may be warranted for screening of the wastewater facility is needed along Highway 422. I've included in my written submissions several articles and studies, one of which states that the wind helps, and this is from the Department of Health, from a government entity, says the wind helps with the evaporation of the water and serves to get oxygen into the water. It also creates waves which help stop insects from breeding and living in the water. Disease-causing mosquitoes, for example, need water to breathe. For a lagoon to be able to break down the sewage or effluent properly and to be a healthy place, it must meet the following requirements. There must be no grass, trees, or other vegetation on the banks surrounding area, in the surrounding area, which would stop the sun and wind action made by the lagoon. The water must be free of vegetation or objects which stop the lagoon's surface wave action or create still action. So the applicant is attempting to have it both ways here. Trees for buffers and screening for odors in the aesthetics, but a lack of trees is required to effectively mitigate the problems associated with these lagoons. So both of these instances are essentially the applicant trying to have his cake, eating it too. With any remaining time, I can speak briefly to the ETA.
You're actually a little bit over time, sir.
Okay.
I gave you some extra because of the difficulty, but yeah, you're at 4 minutes now.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say one last thing about the EC analysis. EC analyses are usually much longer than what I see here. They're usually prepared independently by experts, and I think the analysis that I provided in my written comments can demonstrate that the EC analysis that we see here is not a serious attempt at an EC analysis, and it needs significant modification to meet the standards for intersection. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we've taken public comment from everyone who wanted to give public comment, yes? All right. So now I will give the applicant 3 to 5 minutes to rebut or provide further clarification before I'll close the hearing. That's why I surveyed the room. There's no one here in favor.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Mark Bartholomew. My address is 14 North Central, Suite 104, Medford, 97501. And I actually don't plan on talking about anything substantive. I did want to address the open record period request. We were certainly amenable to that, and I'd like to propose some sideboards for that open record period if the board is willing to hear that proposal. The gentleman who just spoke, Mr. Malone, he asked for 2 14-day periods followed by a 7-day period. That's fine with us, but I think that needs to be further explained. And so my proposal would be that the first 14-day open record period would be open to any parties for or against, and they could submit argument, they could submit evidence. The second 14-day period would be, again, open to any parties. However, the only new evidence permitted during that second 14-day open record period would be new evidence that's responsive to new evidence that came in during the first open record period. And it's also during that period that the opponents would submit any final arguments against the application. And that would be followed by the third open record period, which would only be a 7-day period. That's open only to applicant, and that's per statute. Applicant gets final rebuttal, and that would be limited to merely final arguments, so no new evidence submitted. And so the respective dates of those periods would be May 25th, June 8th, and June 15th, at least by my calendar. I'd also ask that the record for this proceeding includes all of the prior records. So if Mr. Noble could make the record from the prior proceedings and put that in the record for this proceeding, we would appreciate that. And so then after all of these open record periods, then the board would conduct a continued hearing, but only for the purpose of deliberation and not for additional public comment. So that's my proposal.
All right. Anything else to add?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will now take questions from the board of either any of the public, any of the applicant or attorneys, our planning director.
Mr. Bartholomew, I hate to ask you to come back up to the mic, but I have a question. So I totally understand your first 14 days, and I agree with the fact that it should be open to either party.
Correct.
I'm great with that. I'm great with the fact that the last 7 days can only be open to the applicant. And I understand that at the end of all this period, that the 3 commissioners do deliberations, and we do that in the public hearing, but that's all it is deliberations. I understand all that. Your second 14-day period, I'm confused.
Okay.
And the reason I'm confused is because one of these people out here wants to make a rebut on something else that somebody else says. How are they going to know what that was? Today, the way I understand it, and I'm putting words in Mr. Noble's mouth and Ms. Gallagher's mouth, today I don't believe the county has a mechanism to inform every single person that was here on the stuff that's coming in and coming out.
Yeah, so I appreciate your question. I would say that by law, the applicant gets the last word as far as rebuttal.
And I got no problem
And
with that.
so if the opponents want to rebut something that the proponents submit, then they're going to have to wait till later in the record period, and we could theoretically put something in at the end. But the key is we cannot submit any new evidence unless it's evidence that's in response to new evidence submitted in the 14-day record period. So as far as the evidentiary issues, they're going to want to look at the evidence, apply that evidence to the law, and comment on it. They'll already have their chance to comment on that because we can't put any new evidence in after the first 14 days unless we're forced to put something new in response to something new one of the opponents submits in the first 14. It's not completely perfect as far as everybody being able to get the last word, but there's no other way to do that because, again, like I say, by law, the applicant gets the last word on rebuttal.
Again, I have no problem with that. I have not figured out a mechanism in my own mind how we are going to let everyone know what everybody's responses were.
Right, I
mean,
understand.
Just say Miss Dahl, Judy Dahl, I believe that's how you say her last name. I believe she's from Idaho, I think. She's not going to be calling in here every 30 minutes saying, hey, I need a copy of anything that came in today.
Right. So she could do exactly what I would do. And that is, I'm going to submit something during the first 14-day open record period. And then I'm going to ask Eric, hey, at the end of that open record period, I'm going to ask him what came in. And so I will use that to determine if I submit anything during the second 14-day open record period. So this is what I do on all these hearings is I have to check just like everybody else. I don't get an automatic mail drop. I have to check in and say, hey, can I have the updated record?
It's kind of what I figured it was, but I wanted to make sure that
it's old-fashioned and we're all in the same boat on that. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Eric?
Just to clarify what we did for other applications, and we'll probably do for this one that had these expanded open periods, is on Klamath County planning, once you get into Find Us and you go Klamath County, the main page.
You're talking about online, Eric?
Yeah. Okay. On community development planning, we'll set up a special thing, and then every time I get an exhibit during this open period, I'll post it either that day or the next day. It'll be on there, so you can check on June 8th, and you'll see everything that's been brought in during that 14 days. And then, then you can respond to it. So it will be online if you have the capability of going online.
That's better than anywhere else.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Hold on. We can't have a lot of chatter in the audience or we get a little out of control. So right now it's time for the board to ask questions, whether they have questions of the public, questions of either legal counsel, or questions of our planning director. Eric, might you share how notifications were made for this? I know we follow a certain legal procedure.
Yes, so we are required to send out legal notices 20 days prior to a hearing. So in this case, on April 15th, we sent out a notice informing everyone that on May 11th, and we made a typo, it said May 11th, 2020, that we're going to have the hearing. So then on April 23rd, we sent out a corrected notice of this hearing with the correct date, 2021. So that's how we did notice. There was a little typo, so we corrected that. I know the attorney said that we made an error in what I read really briefly, that we made an error and didn't give 20-day notice, but we really did. And I would argue a reasonable person could think when they saw the 2020 date that we made an error in that one.
Okay. Are there questions or thoughts?
Just for the benefit of the audience, can you go over how you determine who receives one of those notices?
Yes, again, that's in state statute how we do notices outside urban areas and on resource lands. We just do 500-foot buffer around the property boundaries. So, if you're a mile away, you will be outside of that boundary, and we do not supply notice directly. But people do. That's why we have it in the paper. Word of mouth gets around.
We don't do audience questions. I'm sorry, we're a very formal proceeding here. We don't do audience questions. We don't do Q&A. Right now it's time for the board to ask questions if they have questions of members of the public, of the appellants, or the applicant or planning staff.
Eric, any issue with entering into this record, the earlier record from a year ago in the first proceedings?
No, absolutely not. We have that as part, we did a great record as part of the Luba hearing, and so we have all that.
So I would just say that
we will certainly add that in.
Okay.
It'll be online, pretty soon.
And then lastly, just for the board, I'm okay with both Mr. Malone's and Mr. Bartholomew's suggestions as far as the extension periods of the 14 days, what they are able to submit during those periods, and then the final 7.
So before we make that decision, I want to know if the board's comfortable with me closing the hearing, or if the board thinks they may have additional thoughts or comments.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
So I am closing the hearing now at 3:26. Now we'll move into board deliberation only on next steps. So go.
So yeah, just as I just outlined, both the suggestion of Mr. Malone and Mr. Bartholomew as to the extension periods and the sideboards on those periods, and then of course we already covered the record from the initial one. I don't have a problem with that as well. I think that's a reasonable request.
Is that a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, so we have a motion that's been made and seconded to set the next periods as they were described by Mr. Malone and Mr. Bartholomew with those sideboards. So does that indeed put us, did somebody double check the dates? Does that indeed equal May 25, June 8, and June 15?
A couple things. Mr. Bartholomew's dates added up the same as mine, so we're in agreement on those dates. While we're at this, it might be a good idea if we could set a time and date certain for the deliberation and decision.
Right. Yep. That will. I just wanted to make sure our dates were right before we go there.
So June 15.
So I just want to point out, my proposal is slightly different than Mr. Malone's, and the difference is within the middle period, the second 14-day period.
Is on the new.
It's
Only on the new.
responsive.
Correct, and I think his proposal would not involve evidence at all in the second 14-day period. Personally, I think it's more fair, because if someone submits evidence in the first 14-day period, under his proposal, neither side could submit evidence in response to that. Under my proposal,
You could, and
everybody could.
I'm okay with that, just being responsive and just allowing people to have the opportunity to speak. I think I'm good with that.
Is that where you're at, Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
All right, so we do have a motion on the table for next steps, and then Eric, I promise, will set day and time. But I want to get this motion addressed first. All in favor signify with an aye. Chair votes aye, motion passes. All right, next we need to set the time certain for deliberation. I don't have a calendar in front of me.
Well, it's anytime after the 15th, right? So the 15th is a Tuesday, but they need to have till end of business that day.
Why don't we do, Tuesdays are usually a good bet. Why don't we do the following Tuesday? That gives staff a little time to sort of clean up anything we might need, making sure we have all the documents we need.
And we have planning that evening, so we could probably just come in a little bit early and do it prior to planning.
Mm-hmm. How do you guys feel about how does the board feel about a time certain of 5 o'clock?
On the 22nd?
On the 22nd. Is that okay with staff?
I'm okay with that.
Okay with the board?
Does that work for you guys?
All right.
Okay.
So I will move that we set a time certain for June 22, 5 p.m. back in this room for deliberations of the board.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor signify with an aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes. Does the board need anything before I adjourn us?
I don't believe so.
I would just make just to set expectations with a date and time certain set by the board right now, we do not send out new notices informing you of that date and time.
So June 22nd, 5 p.m. here. Again, we won't be taking public comment or new testimony at that time. That's simply for the board to deliberate, but you're welcome to come watch. We will also stream it via Zoom if you would prefer to watch from your home, or and Charter if you'd prefer to watch from home.
And YouTube, right?
All right. And YouTube. See, we're all over the place.
We're trying to make ourselves available.
All right. So with nothing else, we'll adjourn at 3:30. If anyone has process questions like yours about not having a computer, check in with planning staff about how we can get information to you. Okay? Thank you, everyone, for coming. Be safe out there.
I'll get it.
You